So this is the fourth Stakeholder Day. Stakeholder Days are focused on solvents and the Green Deal. And in this fourth Stakeholder Day, we'll tackle safe and sustainable solvents and their applications today and in the future. My name is Anna Tancorra, and I am the Vice Chair of the European Solvent Industry Group, ESIG. And today I am stepping in to replace our beloved Chair Rob Oates, who couldn't be with us today in meeting room. I have the pleasure to co-chair this meeting with Alain Dice. Alain is the Secretary General of the European Aerosol Federation, as well as the Chair of the Downstream Users Coordination Group. So I have some administrative topic to cover. Therefore, it's the first Stakeholder Day, so to try to remember them, I number them. First, safety. For those in the CEFIC office, today there's no intention to have a fire drill. So if you hear a fire alarm, this is not a drill. And we are supposed to follow the instruction of the CEFIC employees. Maybe you can raise your hand and make yourself visible. We are supposed to leave our belongings here, not to take the elevator, and move to the assembly point. Competition law. This is a forum where competitors sit together. So we are supposed to comply strictly with competition law. You see on the slide the do's and don'ts. No discussions about pricing, volumes, production capacity, transportation rates, and so forth. If at any time you feel uncomfortable, please raise your hand and we'll stop the discussion. Third, some instructions to enjoy even more this day, this morning together. For those in the meeting room, please, if you want to ask a question, raise your hand. There is a button you have to push to be able to use the microphone. Wait a little bit so that the light becomes green. Close the microphone once you have finished to speak. And if possible, please, let's limit the discussion to two people at a time, because we have the cameras connected to the microphones, and then people online won't understand anymore who's talking and who is in silence. For the online participants, you can raise your hand through the button on Teams, as well as using the chat for asking questions. The chat and the online participation is monitored by ESIG Secretariat. And we'll hope to receive as many questions as possible. Questions are a key element for the success of this day, and allow to see aspects that maybe have not been considered originally. So please ask your questions. We expect and we hope not to be able to follow up with all of them. We expect many, but we'll try to follow up offline. So we'll keep them saved and we'll try to answer. The meeting will be recorded, and the publication of the recording will be done after approval received from the speakers. I think I covered everything so far, so I can again welcome you all. I'm very happy to be with you, and I hand it over to Alain. Thank you.
Sorry, let's move down. I'm very happy to co-chair this meeting with you, and that changed from to be with Rob for many years now. Welcome to all of you to this ESIG Stakeholder Day. And we will start this event introduction given by the European Commission. We want to set the scene and look at the broad pictures. And then ESIG will, that will be Anna, will give a very brief overview of ESIG. Oh, that's you, Cornelia? Cornelia will do it, of the ESIG activities. And it will be followed by a panel discussion featuring representatives from several solvent using company or association in this case. And please let me welcome our first speakers, Christina Marculi from the European Commission. Thank you very much for joining us. From DG Research and Innovation, RTD. Christina is working in the unit E3, which is looking after industrial technologies, in fact. And after we will have Iranzu, okay, from the Joint Research Center, this time in ISPRA in Italy, that will give us sustainability by design framework, which is quite important for all of industry, which is your teams. So I'll leave you, Christina, the floor. Start presenting. Thanks a lot.
Good morning from my side, and thank you for the invitation. Thank you for having me here. It's actually my first time engaging live with a community, a homogeneous community. Like, I've engaged with different kinds of stakeholders in more, let's say, varied groups. So I'm curious to see what you have to ask, what you have to bring also, because it is a process of giving and taking right now, and it's a process that we're shaping. So it's very interesting for us. We cannot possibly know every detail of every sector. So it is actually really a positive thing for us to hear you out and hear about all of your day-to-day challenges in the things that we're putting forward and our ideas. So I very much welcome the discussion. Yeah, I was already presented. Please call me Christina. I will talk a little bit about the policy context, placing SSbD into the bigger picture, and I will touch upon some other links that some of you might be aware in the realm of circularity and sustainability. I will give you a short overview of the impact, the purpose, and the scope. I'll talk a little bit about the framework, and I'll give you a flavor on what has currently or is being currently funded under SSbD. So as probably everybody is aware, I have to ask you for the next slide because I'm changing on my computer. Yes, I will do that. But I don't have the control, right? Okay. So as many of you are aware, the European Green Deal sets some very ambitious goals for Europe being the first climate neutral continent by 2050. And one of the ambitions is to foster
I want to be a long way. I know, I actually did. I didn't even want to drive out of our place because I mean, it was the first one I was saying.
Kindly those online, if they can mute your microphone, those online.
Centrally.
Apologies. Okay.
Perfect. It's okay. It's okay. So yeah, one of the big ambitions of the Green Deal is to foster a zero pollution and toxic free environment. And one of the actions, next slide, please. I'll get better at this. One of the actions in order to deliver this was the Chemical Strategy for Sustainability, which aims to phase out the most harmful substances, but not only the substances of very high concern. And it talks about substituting, as far as possible, all substances of concern, otherwise minimizing them or tracking them. The CSS proposes new approaches to tackle emissions and releases across all life cycles and move towards zero pollution for air, the water, the soil, and the biota. Under the CSS action plan, it was proposed to develop safe and sustainable by design criteria for chemicals and materials. And this work began with two reports that were delivered by our colleagues at the JRC. The first one was a review report of safety and sustainability aspects and dimensions, methodologies, and tools. And the second one was the report setting up the framework, which was then published through a commission recommendation at the end of 2022. And it was followed by another report by the JRC, which applied the framework in three case studies. Next slide. Now, so what I just spoke about are really the clear links with SSbD. So SSbD is mentioned in the CSS, and that's really where we exist right now. Some of you might be aware of the Eco Design Directive, which was published back in the days in 2009, and it referred only to energy-related products. Now, this directive in the Green Deal era, and with a big focus on circular economy, it has transformed. It has been updated, let's say, and the new circular economy plan was published in 2020, where one of its goals was to make sustainable products the norm in the EU. And under this realm of making sustainable products the norm in the EU, we have the Eco Design for Sustainable Products Regulation, or the ESPR, that some of you might have heard of, which was published in 2022. And it talks about mainly, so it extends what the Eco Design Directive was in terms of only energy-related products, but it talks about product durability, repairability in all types of products, so that we have products in the market where when something is faulty, we don't just throw them and buy a new product, but how can we really reuse, repair our products? It also covers the presence of substances that inhibit circularity, energy and resource efficiency, recycling and remanufacturing, the carbon and environmental footprint. And another interesting addition to the ESPR is the requirement for information on products, which will be in the form of a digital product passport. And this might be a place where the SSbD data might become relevant. It is not yet a clear link, but we are, of course, in discussion with the colleagues. Also, just to make the difference, ESPR is really focused on products and not chemicals, materials, or first substances, as we name them, but there might be a link coming up. Nothing, I cannot confirm anything right now, but those are discussions that we are following closely, and yeah, it will be favorable if our data could feed into this passport, and if we could have a unified way of knowing what it is that we have into our hands. Next slide. Another initiative that's worth mentioning, and maybe also it rings a bell for some of you, is the One Substance, One Assessment for a faster and more centralized and simplified assessment of chemicals. The idea is to have a common data platform. They call it a one-stop shop access to data on chemicals, which will be a centralized database run by the European agencies and the Commission, and it will comply with EU regulation. Now, the proposal of the One Substance, One Assessment, which was out just before the Christmas holiday, somewhere, I think even 18th of December, somewhere just right before the holiday, has an interesting article where researchers and research consortia that are funded under European Union framework programs ought to give their environmental sustainability data on chemicals and materials to ECHA when this data stems from research that they conduct under European funding. So again, this is a very positive development for us, a possible connection, and actually something that makes us happy, because until now there was a lot of effort in safety data being gathered and being considered as most important. But for our framework, safety matters as much as sustainability, hence the fact that we can see sustainability data together with safety data under one platform and easily findable in the hopefully near future is a very, very positive development. Next slide. So a little bit on the impact that we expect of safe and sustainable by design. So we're talking about a framework that steers the innovation process towards a green industrial transition. We aim to substitute as far as possible or minimize the production and the use of substances of concern, minimize the impact on health, the environment, and the climate during sourcing, production, use, and end of life of chemicals and materials. And it is an initiative that aims to enable change through research and innovation. Next slide. So the recommendation aims to propose a framework for safe and sustainable by design chemicals and materials for research and innovation activities, and it's on a voluntary basis. We address this to member states, industry, academia, and RTOs. And the purpose of the framework right now, of the recommendation, is to actually test the framework. So I will show you a little bit where we are in terms of planning. But right now we are in the middle of our testing phase. And we would really love to receive as much feedback in order for us to improve the relevance of the framework, its user friendliness, the reliability, and how well it becomes operable. So the results that we are gathering right now will allow us to refine the framework by 2025 and to define criteria for safe and sustainable by design in order to guide the design process. Next slide. So this is an illustration of how the SSbD can look along the innovation stages while designing, planning, testing, prototyping, and validating your substance. It's a stage gate approach, and one can move through the phases as more data becomes available, or go back if the assessment was not the desirable one. And one can also imagine that how it is applied, it will look very different if we're talking about a very new substance where there is no downstream data or no easy speculation possible, let's say, no models. And it will look different if we are talking about the same family of substances or something where we can somehow simulate what might come along the application of the stages. Next slide. So just to stress it once again, the SSbD is a research and innovation approach which aims to harmonize the scientific knowledge and the use of assessments so that we can really meet the goals that we have in terms of sustainability and safety in innovation. It is a voluntary scheme that is promoted across research and innovation actions and is especially funded by EU research programs and for a very big part Horizon Europe, that is. And we welcome member states, RTOs, and academia and industry to promote and use the SSbD in their innovation processes. Next slide. I will give you just a brief introduction on the specific steps of the framework. I will not go into too much detail about this, but the framework works in a stepwise approach that helps guide the design or redesign following specific SSbD principles. The first step is the hazard assessment of the chemical or material. The second step includes health and safety aspects in the production and the processing phase of the chemical or material. The third one talks about human health and environmental aspects, but in the end use, in the final application. The fourth step is assessing the environmental sustainability, and there is a fifth step on socioeconomic assessments, which is not present here. The framework for each step gives you a notion of methodologies, aspects, indicators. It proposes criteria, and it helps you evaluate as well. Next slide. Also, briefly here, just to say, as I mentioned earlier, the framework was tested initially by our JRC colleagues on three different types of substances. One were the plasticizers in food contact materials, flame retardants in IT products, and surfactants. There were several lessons learned about things that we need to improve, how to be more concise about the steps, how to define better, use better terminology in our steps, how to set the system boundaries, etc., etc. What happens with data? Are they easy to find, easy to use? Do we want to share data, etc., etc.? But the main outcome was that the framework is applicable. Of course, it is out there to be tested and to become better. But in a first instance, the way we set it up, it is a good base for being able to apply it in different types of chemicals and materials. Next slide. As I said, we are now, since the recommendation was published in 2022, we are running 2-year testing phase. So we don't collect input continuously because our colleagues at the JRC need some time to process this input and be able to implement the changes in the framework. So we had last year in May and June, we had an 8-week opening time for people to report back. We collected that data. We had 28 cases. And now the JRC colleagues are in the process of digesting all of the data. We recently had the first bootcamp on SSbD, which was really hands-on, 3-day hands-on event on how to use the framework. And it was held in Ispra at the JRC. Just before the holiday, we held our 4th stakeholders workshop, which was an update on where we're standing with all of the input that we received, what are the needs for this second testing phase, which will open in 2024, very possibly around the same time, May, June. But here is also to say that even though we might be you might be allowed to report back to us during a very specific time, the template is on our website, so it looks long and you don't have to fill out all of the steps, and it might be that those weeks, I don't know, everybody's on holiday and it's not the good time for you. The reporting template is on our website, so you can already consult it. I don't exclude the possibility that there might be some changes based on the results from last year, but I'm not expecting that this will look completely different from scratch. So if you download it now, you should have a very good baseline of what it's going to be looking like again this year. And so hopefully this year we will be repeating again the process. We will have more people reporting back to us so that we can, let's say, perfect, if there is such concept of having a perfect framework. But it will be version 2.0 at least. It will be better than the first version. That is a certainty. So by 2025, we aim to revise our framework based on what we've learned and to be able to deliver criteria on SSbD. Next slide. So here just a brief overview of the funding opportunities on SSbD. This has been really the focus of Horizon Europe, And we started in work program 21-22 with 4 topics that led to 13 projects. And there we had a coordination and support action as well, which is the EDIS project. Some of you might also know it, which aims to create a network and roadmaps for value chains. We also have part of there is a part in PARC, in the Partnership for the Assessment of Risk for Chemicals. There is a work package in there where they will be developing a toolbox for SSbD. They are gathering different types of assessments, comparing them to assessment tools, LCA tools, etc., and then comparing them with each other so that there is a centralized place where one can find information on what are the tools that I need to do this, which are best fit for my purpose, etc., etc. And I know from the PARC colleagues that they have a first version of their toolbox. They announced this in the December workshop, and they were welcoming projects who wanted to do a test run for them to also be able to improve their output and their functionality. In work program 23 and 24, there were just 3 closed topics, which are gonna lead to 12 projects, which are gonna be starting very, very soon, or maybe should have started beginning of January. We are already 2024. That's probably the case. And there is one open topic until beginning of February. The SSbD framework is mainly mentioned in cluster 4, but is also mentioned in cluster 5 and cluster 6 of Horizon Europe. There are also references in the Innovative Health Initiative, in the Circular Bio-Based Europe joint undertaking, and it is being discussed in the Strategic Research Innovation Agenda of Batteries for Europe. There is also, lastly, a topic in the LIFE program in 2023 about circular economy and quality of life. And next slides. I tried to do a little research very quickly with using as keywords the word solvents to see what we have funded under this realm. And what I found is that under the Circular Bio-Based Europe joint undertaking, there is going to be a topic in 2024. I saw it in their annual work plan, and it has to do with recycling processes. So that's maybe interesting for some of you to keep an eye out. Then what I found is that there was one project in from Horizon Europe in the work program 21-22 addressing solvents, and there were 4 projects under Horizon 2020. Next slides. I think I'm coming closer to an end. I'm sharing here a few important links. The first one is the link to subscribe to our stakeholders network. We don't bombard you with information. We don't do newsletters or such things, but we let you know that that's where you will learn that the testing period is open for how long, etc., etc. When we have our next stakeholders meeting. And from time to time, if there is something really important to ask from our community, that's a channel that we use to do it. But we also have a dedicated SSbD website where you can find all the relevant information about upcoming events that are happening. We try to also record and put the recordings there for those who are unable to make it. And the overarching website of our work is the Chemicals and Advanced Materials webpage, where also there you can find some more info. I think that was my last slide, with just an invitation for you to engage with us and help us actually make this framework really workable, operable, and meaningful above all, I would say. Yeah. Big thank you, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Christina. I think it was extremely important to have you here. And we have another presentation now from Iranzu. And so I immediately give to her the floor, not to lose 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I hope that you can see and hear me well.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So before I start with my presentation, I would like to thank the organizers for giving the ERC and myself on behalf of my team the opportunity of being, in this case, remotely presenting the Safe and Sustainable by Design framework. So in my presentation, if we go to the next slide, as Christina very well presented and gave an overview of the policy context, I will directly jump on the SSbD framework. And for that, first, I would like to review some underpinning concepts that are of importance in order to understand the framework and also its implementation. It's part of the assessment. That it's the second thing that I will touch upon, the Safe and Sustainable by Design assessment presented and proposed in the technical report, and then very briefly some considerations from my side on how industry can participate and contribute in the implementation, in the improvement of the framework. So starting with concepts, the first one, the safety and sustainability, and why it is important to mention it in the context of the framework, because the framework puts for the first time safety and sustainability considerations together. What for the current status have been working separated or in different silos. And here a reminder of the definitions of sustainability, that it's the ability of a chemical material, in this case, to deliver its function without exceeding environmental and ecological boundaries along its entire life cycle, while providing welfare, socioeconomic benefits, and reducing externalities. And safety in the context of chemicals materials is the absence of unacceptable risk for humans and the environment, and preferably this is achieved by avoiding the use of chemicals and materials that have intrinsic hazard properties. Safety is transversal to all sustainability dimensions. It is considered in the environmental sustainability, but also in the social and economic sustainability. But in the context of chemicals and materials, because its complexity and granularity, and in the context of the SSbD, it deserves, as I like to say, its own dimension. So if we move to the next concept that it's relevant, and I think that it has been mentioned before, or I think it has been mentioned because I've been following the presentation by Christina, and it is defined in the Chemical Strategy for Sustainability. The SSbD, it's a pre-market approach. This means that the safety and sustainability considerations of chemicals and materials need to be taken already in the design that it's focused on providing a function of a service. It means that we don't have to wait, as it happens in the current practices, until we have to put these chemicals, materials, processes, or products on the market and then comply with existing regulations. And in this sense, the framework, of course, will contribute to achieve the Chemical Strategy for Sustainability ambitions, going beyond current regulatory compliance. If we move to the next slide, it's a illustration of how these considerations of the design together with the safety and sustainability considerations needs to be integrated in the innovation of new chemicals, materials, processes, and products during the innovation. And for that, we could start with very basic design principles known from different initiatives and strategies methodologies like green chemistry, green engineering, sustainable chemistry, or safe by design that already gives us some indications on how improve the materials development, the process design, or the products design in order to improve the safety and sustainability performance. And this, of course, should also work together and in an iterative process with the stage gate approach that is used in industry when innovating again on materials, processes, and products. If we move to the next one, another important aspect and also mentioned in the chemical strategy for sustainability is that this safety and sustainability needs to be considered through the entire life cycle of the chemical material with the life cycle perspective. This means that we don't need only to focus on the chemical and material, but also in the processes, how it is manufactured, but how it's further processed and how it ends up being a part of a product, and including as well the end of life of the use of the product and the potential exposure to the chemicals and materials in this process. And if we move to the next slide, again, touching upon the design, this means that when we are talking about the design or the redesign, we are not only talking about the molecular design where we change the intrinsic properties of the chemicals and materials, but we are also talking about the process design or redesign where we can as well actively contribute to the reduction of the improvement of the safety and sustainability performance by reducing the exposure, for instance, to the worker, or by reducing being more energy efficient or resource efficient. And the same it happens when we are talking about the product. It also considers the product design or redesign that, as with the processes, can contribute to the improvement of the safety and sustainability performance by reducing the exposure, for instance, to the consumer or the environment. And if we move to the next slide, why it is important to understand all these concepts, because that way as well we can understand the objectives that the CSS puts for the SSbD. And also we can understand how we should approach the safety and sustainability assessment depending on what are our objectives. Because of course the objective of the SSbD is to drive innovation towards safe and sustainable by design, new chemicals and materials, and provide guidance on this sense, but it's also the objective minimizing as far as possible the impact to the human health and the environment by phasing out existing most harmful substances or substituting as much as possible or otherwise minimizing the impact and, of substances of concern. And for that, in addition, the framework should enable the comparative assessment between new and existing chemicals, materials, processes, and products in order to avoid regrettable substitution. So if we move to the next slide now, I will talk a little bit about the assessment. The assessment consists in different blocks to address or to assess the safety and sustainability performance that following this life cycle perspective and also following the logic on how we gather the information in order to do this assessment, it is presented in a stepwise approach. Starting, of course, for the hazard identification of the chemical or material that will be used to do the safety assessment in step 2 and 3. Step 2 addressing worker exposure, so human health and safety aspects in the work environment, and step 3 doing the same for the consumer point of view. And last but not least, the environmental sustainability that will consider all this information in the entire life cycle, as well as step 5 that it's not here, but that as you know, there is a placeholder for the economic and social sustainability assessment as well. And for each step, the framework refers to aspects and indicators that need to be considered in order to ensure this safety and sustainability performance, the assessment. It also proposes some methodologies and tools that are currently used in order to do the assessment, and proposes makes a proposal on how it could be defined criteria and how this the entire safety and sustainability performance could be evaluated. In my next slides, I would talk a little bit about the aspects, dimensions, and in some cases the tools, and starting with hazard identification of the chemical and material. In this case, the SSbD is based, the criteria of SSbD is based on READS and CLP, READS for the information requirements in order to then apply the CLP criteria to identify the hazard profile of the chemical material with regards to the human health hazards, environmental hazards, and physical hazards. And then these hazard classes and categories are gathered or put in three different groups following the chemical strategy for sustainability definitions. So we have group 1A, that it's the most harmful substances, is including the ones that nowadays are following the authorization process under READS, the substances of very high concern. Then we have in group B, substances of concern, again, as defined in the chemical strategy for sustainability and the eco design proposal. And then group C, we will have those that don't fall into group A or B. And here, worth mentioning that the SSbD supports and promotes the use of new scientific knowledge and development, and that it's of importance, especially in step 1, that when we talk about new approach methodologies that contribute to the tiered approach that is proposed for this step, in order to generate data in earlier stages of the innovation when it is not available. If we move to step 2, it's related to the occupational health and safety during the production and the processing of the chemical or material, including its end of life, and how the worker in this case is exposed to these chemicals and materials. It considers the hazards of the chemical material already identified in step 1 and the derived threshold values in this case for workers. But it also has to assess the possibility of the worker to being exposed to these hazards. And for that, we need the information with regards to the physicochemical properties of the chemical or material in order to identify the fate. So what are the routes of exposure of the worker, as well as the chemical or material, the concentration that it's used in the different processes, the frequency and duration of the activities of the worker related to this exposure, as well as the operational conditions that can increase or decrease the likelihood of this exposure to happen, together with the risk management measures in place that can reduce this exposure. And as in step 1, a tiered approach is considered as well, considering these three different aspects, so not only the hazard, but also the exposure and the risk management measures in place and the knowledge or the information that it's available related to them. If we move to step 3, similar to step 2, but in this case we are talking about the consumer exposure to the product, the application in which the material or the chemical is included. And in this case, as in the previous one, of course, we need to consider the toxicity, the hazard of the chemical and materials. In this case, the derived threshold values for the general public, as well as the physicochemical properties of the chemical material, the concentration in the final product, the frequency and duration of the exposure, and the instructions of use in the cases where they are provided to avoid bigger exposure from the consumer. And my last slide, and the next one, it's last but not least, step 4, that talks about the environmental sustainability assessment. The environmental sustainability assess the impacts along the entire life cycle of the chemical and material by means of the life cycle assessment. And in this case, the framework proposes to use the environmental footprint impact assessment method that consists in 16 different impact categories that in step 1 are grouped in 4 different groups following the chemical strategy for sustainability definitions. So we have toxicity, climate change, pollution, and resources. And my last slides related to the framework. It's a little bit of an overview of what I just explained. In short, what are the things that needs to be considered when we are talking about the framework, its implementation, and its the assessment that is proposed. So we have to consider that we have safety, sustainability with the life cycle perspective, that we are talking about a pre-market approach where we can design new or redesign existing chemicals, materials, processes, and products, and that this is an iterative exercise during the innovation. And now, in my next slides, I would like to talk a little bit about some initiatives that actually this is a little bit of repetition because Christina, I think, that went through all of them, but where I see or as in the GRC, we see the industry contribution more easily in order for us to work on the refinement and improvement of the framework. So one of these is IRIS, that it's the International Ecosystem for Accelerating the Transition to Safe and Sustainable by Design Chemicals, Materials, Products, and Processes. The importance of this initiative is, or from my side, is that, as I mentioned, the SSbD, it's not a one single company exercise because we need to consider the entire value chain. We need to consider not only the chemical material, but also the processing and the products. And this means that the entire value chain should engage in this exercise. And IRIS that does a great work on this and considers in this project 7 value chains that are listed there. So packaging, textiles, construction, chemicals, automotive, energy, materials, electronics, and fragrances, and all the stakeholders in the value chain are involved in the exercise. And it's open to include new value chains. So if you have an interest, they are more than happy to hear from you. The next one slide, it's as well another initiative that has mentioned by Christina, the European Partnership for the Assessment of Risk from Chemicals, and the Work Package 8.1 that aims at supporting the operationalization of the safe and sustainable by design. And here, in addition, the main focus, as Christina was saying, it's the development of this toolbox that will facilitate the safety and sustainability assessment during the innovation. But they run other activities in parallel to support this, and they are very happy to hear from stakeholders from industry on how industry innovates and how this information could be incorporated in the development of these tools. So also there is an invitation from industry to engage. And on top of that, these two initiatives that we mentioned are of relevance because we are the GRC RTD aligning and working together with them in order to make the SSbD operationalizable. I never like this word, so implementable. And the last one, it's Also mentioned by Christina, contributing opportunity, the testing phase announced in the recommendation launch in December 2022. The purpose is to test the framework and to get feedback in order to improve the relevance, reliability, and operability. And with this information, with this feedback, we will work in the revision of the framework in 2025. This is the standardized format in which we would like the information or the feedback to be provided, because it's easier to be digested and assessed in a consistent way by the GRC. Christina mentioned that it's open and any kind of feedback can be it's welcome. And actually here I think that from the solvents community, from the solvent sector, there is a lot of information with regards to methodologies that have been developed in the safety and sustainability performance, that learning from them would be very much appreciated. Like, for instance, the exercise with regard to safety on the development of the use maps, but also with regards to the sustainability and the life cycle inventory that my friends are very keen of promoting every time that they have the opportunity. So please, and also all the information behind that there is to support these methodologies. Yeah, this contribution would be very much appreciated. And I think that after that, yeah, Christina already saw this, where we are, what's next. There is still an opportunity to provide feedback and to contribute in order to, afterwards, 2025, we'll start the exercise of the refinement of the framework. And my last slide, it's just a summary of some of the key messages that I would like you to remember. So SSbD is not regulation, it's a pre-market approach. It considers the entire life cycle, very important value chain, is recommended in research and innovation activities, meaning not only chemicals and materials, but also processes and products on a voluntary basis. It's an integrative and iterative process and promotes the use of the latest scientific knowledge. And that was my last slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Christina and Iranzu, for taking the time to be with us today. I think it's very important, as I said, and I've heard from you repeated many times that it's through a dialogue and a mutual understanding that we will make this initiative meaningful, as you said. So that's the purpose of the Stakeholder Day, is to create another opportunity for a mutual understanding. So it's now time for the questions. So I will give priority to questions coming from the meeting room, while the ESIG Secretariat prioritizes and monitors the colleagues online. For those online, raise your hand, and you can also use the chat. So if any question from the meeting room to start with. Yes, please.
Can I ask if there's, do you consider a likelihood that there will be a conflict or maybe a compromise needed between some of your, I know, particularly the environmental footprinting? You talk about toxicity, climate change, pollution, and resources, which are all absolutely spot on, I think. But it's, I heard a comment from a, shall we say, a very large solvent user industry recently, who said that they would accept a degree of toxicity for the sake of achieving net zero, because the pressure on them from their customers to achieve net zero was so intense.
Thank you for your question. Sorry, can I ask you to just introduce yourself very briefly?
Sure. So my name is James Clark, so I'm representing the green technology company called Adable.
Yeah, if I can briefly say something on this first. It is a very interesting and tricky thing to consider, of course. I don't know. There's being romantic and being you know, ideal and dreamy about how we would want things to happen, and that would be the perfect score on every level. Of course, that would be the most advantageous for everybody. But yeah, it is an important consideration to take into account, and I think it will be also done in a very case-specific way. Assessing trade-offs is really a big thing, and it is really very relevant to each case. So we are not going to be saying, okay, we prefer you to focus on this while ditch this or that. That's not going to be our position. Our position is going to be try to achieve as many of these goals as possible in one assessment. But reality is less romantic than the ideal world, maybe, and indeed some of these choices might at some points need to be made until we have good enough alternatives which can hit green in every one of those aspects. So this is really the place where knowing what kind of research needs we have is important, because if right now, let's say, we are faced with a substance where in one of those areas the score is really poor, but it's very much performing on another level, then how can we go back and do some research in improving or substituting it with something else that could give us a better score in everything. So yeah, not very straightforward way to answer that.
Thank you. Please.
My name is Johan Breukelaar, and I'm representing the European Federation of Construction Chemicals. When I see the presentation, I think it's a very commendable effort of the Commission. But building on the first question, I'm a chemist, right? And for me, the whole framework, well, let me say, denies chemistry. If you look at the very first kind of criterion, is that you want to exempt kind of very hazardous chemicals from very long value chains. Very hazardous chemicals are typically what I'm talking about. So very hazardous may not be very reactive, but very reactive is always very hazardous. So very reactive chemicals, as used at the very start of value chains, will result in achieving many of the objectives. So if they're excluding, I'll tell you, the greenhouse deal will not be reached. And I'm talking about, in particular, about an example in construction chemicals, whereas the raw material from, say, made by so it's 3 steps before where our companies come into the whole value chain, 3 steps before that, in manufacture of, say, very basic chemicals by, say, typically specific companies. It's very reactive, it's carcinogenic, it's toxic, it's explosive, but it's very reactive, right? So already in a second or third step, when you come to the 4th step, you will not be able to measure it. It will not be measurable. So, but it ends up into a material, say, I'll give the name concrete admixture, is what the chemicals that my companies are making. And in those concrete admixture, you can't measure this basic starting chemical. But concrete admixtures help in concrete reduce greenhouse gas emissions by some 30%, right? Without it, I'll tell you, the Green Deal, construction is a big contributor to greenhouse gas emissions in the European Union. So without it, you can't do it. So I'm very much, I'm kind of very pleased to hear that it's not, say, an exclusive kind of assessment, but more an inclusive, that if, say, if you handle that chemical such that there is no exposure to, there'll not be exposure to professional users or consumers or even the workers, right? Because it's very hazardous, Right? You don't want your own workers to be exposed to that chemical. So exposure is kind of, for me, the key word. There is no exposure to the chemical. And having said that, then and that's based on chemistry consideration. So maybe a long story, but but in the last workshop, and I'm participating in IRIS, right? So for construction chemicals, and I think that's a very good opportunity to make kind of JRC and the Commission help to understand what the challenges are if you want to achieve the very ambitious zero goal at 2050, which we fully kind of subscribe to, of course. But it needs kind of, yeah, I wouldn't call them even concessions, but it needs considerations of not so strict application of each of the very different steps in the SSbD framework. And I can give, I have not given you the substance, and I won't, but if you ask me, I will give it. But but it's hazardous, right? But I don't want to set your mind to this direction. Thank you.
Thank you. That was maybe not really a question, but a good comment.
Well, it's
Yes, yes.
But
They can't hear you, I think.
at the last workshop, I had a conversation with many people from JRC and the Commission, and I think it's going in the right direction. It's also recognized that this is, I think one of the additional comment is, you can't see, like in LCA, you can't see the forest through the trees. So we must make choices. What are the 5 most important things that you want to address or achieve with this value chain, not 100, right? That's I've been in LCA for a very long time, right? For longer than I'd like to admit. So it's such a complex and comprehensive concept, life cycle analysis, that you need to make choices. And that is what I think. So identify things that for a particular, and they're different for different value chains, right? Not for every value chain, 5 different same things are the same. But you can set, as a commission would say, well, greenhouse gas emission should be there, for example.
Indeed. Yeah. I just, maybe we can continue this discussion during the panel. I would like to give another question yet to the room, and then we move to the virtual audience. Sorry?
I think the representative of a GRC center would like to reply to that. She can.
Okay, fantastic.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, in this discussion of the trade-offs, maybe from my side, and that's the reason why I think that we need to insist reminding some basic concepts of the SSbD, because of course this discussion that we just have, it will be then when we put the chemicals, materials, processes, and products on the market that they will have to take a decision with regards to safety and sustainability performance. The idea with the SSbD assessment and this iterative process during the innovation is to be able to identify these trade-offs as we are in the innovation process and try to address them as soon as possible or reduce this unbalanced performance. So it's a little bit to put the right place of the discussion, because I think that sometimes we forget that it's for research and innovation activities.
Thank you, Iranzo, for the comment. We have, please.
Sorry, can you hear me? Yes. Hello, I'm Julia Sebastio from DUC. I wanted to ask about the common data platform that you mentioned. Personally, I think the idea of centralizing data makes a lot of sense and making it more searchable. But are there also plans to make that data exportable so it could be put into company systems? And because searching data is great, but having it exported so it can go into company systems facilitates also its use. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. I think it's a little bit early to be able to give you a clear answer on this, and the reason is that right now the one substance one assessment which talks about the data platform it's a proposal, so it's not set in stone yet, and that would require, so there are the different European agencies which will be compiling and be responsible for the different types of data, which first of all, they need the tools to be able to do this, the people to be able to do this, because it's not just going to be a data repository, but it's also going to be, there's going to be standards as what is in there. There's going to be some kind of quality control of what's going to be there. So I don't know how short or long term we're talking about this before it's set up and usable amongst the European agencies, and I don't know what the plans are on how this data can be then shared. So I am unsure about this because it's very early days, and yeah, the platform doesn't even exist yet. It's a proposal on how that is going to look like and what kind of data will be reported to which kind of agency at this stage.
Thank you. Angelina, do we have any question from the virtual?
Not that I see, no.
Okay, then we have another question from here.
So my name is Luc Turkenburg. I represent coatings manufacturers and printing inks manufacturers of Europe today. The example that Johan gave is, I think, very understandable. You could also give another example where you have chemicals of relative low concern which are used in the beginning of a phase and then create something which during its life cycle is very durable, and as a result of that it will not break down after it has been used. So now we have two situations. One is very toxic at the beginning, one is very bad for the environment. And how green, 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 green. So everything according to plan and chemistry. But there will be situations where you need to trade off something either at the
end. Yes, I mean, this discussion is it's not going to be conclusive here because there's not a straight answer to this, and what we need to think about is that right now I don't know if it's clear for all sectors and everybody working with substances or later down products. What SSbD allows you to do is actually to have a clear language and a clear understanding of where are those red crosses that you see, how red are they also in terms of like a scale, because it's not just green or red, that's not how we're trying to assess things, and how to move on from there. And it is a way to have like a comprehensive understanding and include the entire value chain in what's happening. Because right now, what we often see, sometimes we engage with, let's say, a specific sector who tells us, we received this first material, but we barely have any information on it. So the SSbD assessment is also an opportunity for these bridges to be met, and that it's not down the scale where you are with something in your hands where you don't know its origin, how exactly it's composed, what it is made of, etc., etc. So it is also a way of making every step of the process transparent, and therefore being able to address the needs of innovating in some cases or making some choices when there are no other possibilities. And this is also often a discussion So the SSbD is not going to tell you if you scored red, don't go anywhere with it. It's just going to raise your awareness of where are you red, why are you red, how red are you, and how close are you to maybe making a small change and becoming greenish. Let's put it very simply. And this discussion is mainly held a lot of times when people hear about REACH, which that is gonna put bans for substitution, etc. But also, what is important to understand is that even these big regulations like REACH do take into account what is applicable today, and there are and were ongoing big consultations where specific sectors were reporting and saying, yes, we know we do have this substance, but it's absolutely impossible to ban it right now because the world will collapse and we will be without batteries. Let's say that is a big sector that is facing a problem, and all of these things will be taken into account as far as giving more time for these substances to be substituted, or maybe in our lifetime they will not, and we will be continuing to use some of those that are consciously then though hazardous in this and or the other way. So this is how we see it. I don't know if Iransu wants to add on it.
Thank you. There are other questions from the meeting room, but unfortunately, we finished the time available for this. But thankfully, we can continue our discussion here because we will have lunch together afterward. So now we have we give a little bit of time to Cornelia for presenting the activities of ESIG, the European Solvent Industry Group, showcasing how the solvent industry is producing and supplying safe and sustainable solvents for safe and sustainable applications today and in the future. Thank you, Cornelia.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. And just to the other hands in the room, so we can also have your questions during the panel, obviously. So, I mean, so there's still another hour for that. Yeah, thanks for giving me the floor. I would just quickly set the scene. Maybe I should have started because we're already far in the discussions, is also just to explain why ESIG is organizing the Stakeholder Day on this particular topic, and also how ESIG as a trade association is always trying to follow policy regulations and also things to come up in order to be proactive and kind of ahead of the stream. Let me just give a very short introduction on what ESIG is. For those, I think in the room, most of you know ESIG and me, but just to explain you a little bit. So ESIG is the trade association of two other trade associations, so to speak, of the oxygenated solvent producers and the hydrocarbon solvent producers. So they all have their own activities, and ESIG, we run horizontal programs. We are part of CEFIC, and we also have downstream user associations organized via SVOC, which are the main solvent using associations. We will also have an SVOC annual meeting in the afternoon. As you can see, the name, our main focus here is on VOC emissions, because that's like the, say, biggest problem, if you want, from solvents. These are our members. So just to give you a flavor, so it's all the big global chemical players manufacturing solvents in the EU. On the next slide, you see our vision and mission. I will not read that out, but the vision, we got that ready last year, is clearly that we want to be seen as the point of reference for safe and sustainable use of solvents. And in this, the first point of our mission always has been to promote the safe and sustainable use of solvents. So now, what do we mean by that? It's obviously, yeah, we are kind of also in the transition from today to tomorrow. Let's focus on the today. So what we have in place, our focus is mainly on safe handling and emission controls and these kind of things, and making sure that people that handle solvents, even though some of them might be hazardous, are well protected. We have a whole portfolio of what we call solvents at work material available, which is our cornerstone of the product stewardship commitment, and we have our share also of the product stewardship team in the panel later on. On the next slide, it shows you just what we have available. So it's best practice guides in several EU languages on diversified topics like flammability or the safe use of gloves. We have some posters with easy to understand icons, again in the main EU languages of operation. And next to that, on the next slide, we also have some films which we produce together, most of them with our sister association in the UK, the Solvent Industry Associations. Those films and also the best practice guidelines are regularly updated and again available in next to English, also French, Italian, Spanish, German, and some of them even in Greek. On the next slide, I just want to highlight also, as I told you, we have these two sector groups, OSPA and HISPA. So also here, even ahead of time, things are, or ahead of regulation, things have happened always to assure safe handling of solvents. Just to mention two for each of the groups. In OSPA, we have what we call the OSPA Charter, which is a voluntary agreement in place since 2096. So again, well ahead of REACH and all these discussions, focusing on reprotoxic glycol ethers. So basically, it has established that every glycol ether manufacturer has his distributors or even further users. So the distributors has then the other users to sign off that they use the glycol ether that is reprotoxic only in industrial applications where they cannot substitute and in controlled conditions like closed systems and things like that. So it's a living thing. So I mean, even if we have sometimes new reprotoxic glycol ethers, they're added, use service are done, and then the whole thing really kicks in. For the hydrocarbon solvent manufacturers, we have something interesting called reciprocal calculation procedures, RCP, which again has been developed by industry and allows the setting of OELs for complex hydrocarbons. So it means if you have hydrocarbon solvents, are often what we call UBCBs, so we are in fact exposed to many different substances that are in one, just to keep it simple. I know it's not how Anna would explain it, but it's a system that calculates you an OEL for these complex substances to make sure that even though there is no official OEL established, that if you have your workers working with these substances, that they are protected. On the next slide, we move then towards the sustainability part of sustainable, safe and sustainable use of solvents. So we really have only started the journey, if I might say so, with also putting a sustainability statement on our website, which kind of lists the obvious from the manufacturer's point of view, so not for the application point of view, reducing emissions, enhancing energy efficiency, diversifying feedstock, and obviously investing in research and innovation. So what do then, and then we need to see what do we do in practice on that. On the journey to sustainability, just to give you an example, and you have heard this word already today in the presentations, that is, so when the Commission started to develop the concept for PEFs, product environmental footprints, to avoid greenwashing and establish methodologies to really make sure that the product, if you call it green, is green. They have developed this methodology. In the beginning, that was 7-8 years ago when I joined ESIG, the members really wanted to engage and develop also own categories and so on. In the end, we realized the thing we could be doing is to provide PEF compliant data sets for the manufacturing step for anyone who wants to engage in setting up a category for their product, because solvents usually are not consumer products, although they might end up in parts of them. So that's where we decided to get active. We were also quite happy then to see when the Commission issued a recommendation to industry that they said industry associations should develop these data sets. We were already in the middle of them. We have now almost 8 available for hydrocarbon solvents, for oxidized solvents, and probably some more to come, especially for the hydrocarbon solvent side. We start next year again to review what we call also the REACH categories and see what makes sense to continue this exercise. But again, that's an example to explain also where we come from to be here today. On the next slide, yeah, okay, skip that, skip. Next one. So otherwise I use the time. So what we have seen when we discuss again green and bio and sustainability, I mean, there are a lot of concepts, but it can still mean anything and nothing. So there is no official definition or something. What is a sustainable solvent? Doesn't exist. What is a green solvent? Doesn't exist. What is a bio solvent? Doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is what is a bio-based solvent, because here again it means there's an EU standard available, to which ESIG has contributed also actively by being the convener of the then working group at the time. So basically we kind of paid the experts to do the work, and then all these member states, those of you familiar with sanitization procedures know how this works. What we often see though is that then people come and claim something environmental friendly or less toxic, but that is not always true. So we really had fun cases, even with the ESIG award, or with somebody coming and wanting to put something on a website in CEFIC to say that, I mean, they are like better solvents than others. And all the time we realized, it's not true, because either, you look at the safety data sheet, or unfortunately, and that is also something I think where we really have to see with PARC and toolboxes and so on, because if you develop something from scratch, you have REACH and you have to test the substance. So, but how can you know it's not really reprotoxic if you don't have a reprotoxicity test? In the end, you need also to have to test under REACH to be able to claim that. Sometimes also people claim it's less toxic, although it's still, because solvents, we have heard reactivity of chemicals and so on, might be skin sensitizing or eye irritating or something like that. But most of these, let's say, green alternatives have the same tox properties, because that's how it is. And then last but not least, on the other side, on the environmental side, you always want to compare and verify also LCA information. I think one of the examples, we had somebody claiming to have a nice alternative, but the boiling point was much higher than traditional solvents. So meaning in the production process, I mean, their footprint must have been much higher than the footprints for, let's say, the fossil-based solvent. But just to give you some examples, so this is like really the discussions we are having. We try also to get the picture right, to say, okay, let's see. And now when we move to the next slide, and you can skip the next one, go to the next one. So this is then really where we started our journey for today, like the concrete journey on SSbD, when we saw the strategic research and innovation plan for safe and sustainable chemicals materials issued in September 2023. So because here, if you make another click, you have, so we really tried then to say what is sustainable, what does it mean by design, because in these strategic you have the kind of vision that one of the product groups, or one of the chemicals that should be benefit from all this money, also from Horizon and so on, is to develop solvent formulations without hazardous substances and toxicity aspects linked to their volatility and risk of pollution along the entire life cycle. So, which again is a nice vision. And then we said, but how the hell can we do that? And then, we have heard on the SSbD thing, we have heard about IRIS. That was already nicely mentioned also by Iranzo. So we can also skip these slides, because here you have seen in IRIS, we have this value chain already organized, and all these value chain, the 7 ones that are in IRIS, use solvents. I mean, what we checked already is, of course, it's not solvent specific yet, but maybe that's something we want to do. And really in ESIG, we consider also the stakeholder day today as the first step towards really tomorrow, to get familiar also for the ESIG members with the SSbD and the different frameworks, and the Commission framework and IRIS. And we have also TNO that is starting to develop something. And really also for the members to say what makes most sense. So we just want to promote it, that you should develop solvent formulations that are less toxic and the volatility and so on, what I just showed you. Do we want to test the Commission framework, or do we want to develop already our own thing with somebody from the value chain? And that's why I'm also happy to have so many value chain represented, to also in the panel learn your opinions, what you think is feasible, and where we as the manufacturers and the Manufacturer Association should best be there to support and help to see what is in for us and for everyone. And I think that was my last slide. Yeah, and just another example again on when we use solvents and not on sometimes you might need them to be sustainable.
Nice closure. Cornelia, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you also for having brought us back on track almost in terms of timing. I now hand it over to Anne Dirks, the SAFIC Manager for Sustainability, Director, sorry, for Sustainability, and for the panel session. So another opportunity for a discussion and an exchange of opinion.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So indeed, let's use the time that we have allocated for this panel. We had some preparatory discussions. It's a really interesting panel, so let's not lose time on too many words that don't matter that much. The panelists of today, so I will ask them to introduce themselves one by one, company characteristics, of course, and then say something like, why are you here? Like, are you representing a producer or a user? So if we can stick to 2 minutes rather than 3, that we promised, that would be great. Starting off, I'm going to do it in alphabetical order. So starting off with Andreas, if that is okay with you, Andreas.
Yes, thank you very much. Andreas Levermann is my name. I'm, on the one hand, Technical Managing Director of one company, SH Wire, Springer & Hass Elektrodraht in Germany, producing winding wires, and also representing our European organization, EWWA, European Winding Wire Association. Now, many of you won't have heard of winding wires so far, so I try to use the 2 minutes to explain why I'm here and why this is an important subject. Well, first of all, winding wires are, well, you could regard them as a commodity. Easy product, easy to produce, nothing special, they all look the same. This is definitely not the case. We would like to call it a highly sophisticated or highly technical commodity. Purchasers like to call it commodity. It's a very complicated process. It's a 24/7 operation, applying solvent-based enamels on a copper or aluminum core. And to give you one example about our company, which is just one of about 15 installations in the EU, we have a technical capacity of 70,000 tons winding wires per year, which means about 180,000 kilometers of wire each day. And there you can see it's on the one hand, and I think we will come to this later, on the one hand a product design, but it's also very much a process industry. The way especially these enamels are applied in up to 40 steps, just a few microns. Solvents play a very dominant role, not only achieving the very complex requirements that especially modern applications of winding wires have. As an example, traction motors in emotive applications. The requirements are very, very complex. So it's a balanced process between the enamels, which are developed and produced by a few companies. We are in the sandwich position, and on the other hand, we have the requirements from our customers, especially the automotive industry. So this as a quick introduction. The size of our company is 250 employees, a family-owned company. Yeah, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andreas, for informing us on such a complicated process in only 2 minutes, but we come back to you. Next on my alphabetic list would then be Christian. Christian, you're representing here the Product Stewardship Group of ESIG. If you can introduce yourself a bit further and give some further background.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Christian Vetter. I work as a product steward at LyondellBasell in Rotterdam. And LyondellBasell is a global leading producer in intermediate and derivative chemicals and also polymers that are used in everyday products and solutions for everyday sustainable living. But the reason I'm here is not that I work for LyondellBasell. It is basically that I'm the chair of the ESIG product stewardship team. And Cornelia already explained that with the product stewardship team, we initially focused more on the safe use of solvents and avoiding emissions to the atmosphere rather than also the sustainability things, the sustainability aspects. And that is something we want to take on board more in the new year. So within the ESIG product stewardship team, we have an objective to develop a pilot for the use of SSbD in our Solvents group. But we do not know yet exactly how that pilot should look like. So for me, an objective for today is also to collect input, ideas, suggestions also from people around the table on how we can develop and structure that pilot, which we will then ultimately propose to our steering committee in ESIG for execution later in the year.
Excellent. Thank you, Christian. And we're looking forward in the input that is being asked here. And our next on my list is then Johan. Johan, you had already the floor for quite some time, so if you can limit it then to 1 minute, that would be lovely.
It's a challenge for me. So my name is Johan Breukelaar. I'm with the European Federation of Construction Chemicals. We're a downstream user of solvents. And solvents are close to my heart because I did research and development on hydrocarbones and oxygenated solvents for working for a company that produces both hydrocarbones and oxygenated solvents in the Netherlands. Thank you.
Thank you, Johan. Excellent. Short and crisp. Yes. And then we have online with us as well, Joris Gilberts. Floor is yours. Joris, we can't hear you. And that's still the case, so I hope. Nope. Still cannot. Not yet. Still not. Let's give it a few more seconds, and otherwise we come back to your introduction in a while.
Can you hear me now?
Absolutely. Loud and
Okay,
clear.
great.
Joris.
Well, apology for the technical interruption then. But I am Joris Gilberts. I'm the sustainability manager of Aspen OS. And I work within Aspen Pharmacare. That is a global pharmaceutical company with more than 9,000 employees. And in the Netherlands, we have 3 sites with approximately 750 employees. And we are making the active pharmaceutical ingredients of a broad range of medicines. For instance, for contraceptives, we do not make the pill, but we make the hormones that are in the contraceptive pill. And we are a user of a broad variety of solvents that you would find in organic synthesis and purifications. So from acetone, THF, ethyl acetate, hexane, heptane, dichloromethane, you name it. And we are also, of course, working on making our processes more sustainable. And that is why I'm here to contribute to the discussion.
Okay, thank you very much, Joris, for this introduction. So we'll now dive a little bit more in the content. So we will try to leave some time for Q&A from the meeting room, also coming from the online participants. Don't hesitate to send your question. As was already mentioned by our chair, if we can't deal with them in the frame of this hour, we will certainly give a follow-up because that's why we're here for. So let's dive in the content. So a question we had was, we heard already the framework being introduced, criteria being named, aspects being named. So can I ask, especially the users here of the solvents, so what in your understanding are the most important sustainability criteria in your experience, in your use, in your application when we are discussing solvents and safe and sustainable by design? Now I'll do now Johan first, and then Joris will come, and then you will come. You see, I'm just splitting it up all the time. Johan, can you help us? Can you enlighten us? What are the most important ones in your view as a user?
As a user, I think it's VOC emissions associated with solvents is a clear kind of key criterion, and where it can help us manufacturing kind of the chemicals to be used in concrete or other construction applications. The solvent is used as a carrier, right?
Yeah.
So And sometimes you have to an opportunity to regain or recover the solvent, but most of the times you don't have that opportunity. So that's why VOC emissions, I think, is the
top
key one.
Yeah.
And some VOC emissions may also give rise to greenhouse gas emissions, right?
Sure.
They're kind of, in a way, sometimes greenhouse gases.
It's connected. Yes. Joris, thank you, Johan. And Joris, from your perspective?
Yes, well, besides the fact that we would need to have the solvents with the right function in the processes that we have, I think the life cycle analysis and the carbon footprint is very important. How would a solvent contribute to a more circular process? And in that perspective, recyclability. So can you reuse a solvent? That would be an interesting topic. But as I said, the footprint is, I think, of major importance for us, combined with the toxicological effects for patients and environment, of course.
Yeah, thank you. Andreas, do you recognize these top priorities, or would you have others in your applications?
I think I quite agree to Joris from, of course, a different viewpoint from our industry, but it sounds very feasible. At the moment, the CO2 footprint is of very high concern, also from the customer side. So the pressure is on, basically. We are a high energy consuming industry, because we need it not only for drawing and rolling the wire, the metal before, but also for enameling. So that is a major topic. The second issue we have, or the second topic, which is quite favorable for winding wires, is recyclability. And to give you an impression, 90 to 95% of the product is the metal, and this is more or less fully recycled or recyclable at least. And the portion of copper, of recycled copper being used in our product is also considerable and increasing. It's probably around the industry somewhere between 30 and 50% right now, although we need very pure copper because of the conductivity. So that is probably the overall picture. And in respect to solvents, we have a very small or thin cover or insulation thickness of the enamel. So that is a very small portion of the product. And whatever is applied of solvent-based enamels not being used is fed back into the storage. So that is being used again.
Yeah, thank you. I heard you already, Andreas, referring to the customer needs. I heard the question same over there. Would you agree to the other panelists that the customer needs are the main driver, or do you see other drivers as well that would influence your sustainability criteria? Anyone who wants to pick up further on that one from the panel? Yeah, Johan?
I think that regulatory requirements or, say, even voluntary, like SSbD, are more challenging.
More challenging or more pressing? Or
more challenging.
More challenging. Yeah, I think. Any other comment? Andreas, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, we don't all know them, not in detail, but it's a very tough job to see all the different aspects coming together. Sometimes it's not clear what the priorities are. So I think from the discussions that we have, first of all, having basically a voluntary process or tool, to enable innovation, that's much preferred in contrast to regulations which can never be industry specific, which is very difficult to comply with. So from that respect, I think it's good to involve all the value chain, all the players in the value chain. And it's not only the customers, so it's also the suppliers, the chemical companies, of course, who have a goal in that direction. So we all need to work together, I suppose.
Yeah. Indeed. And we will come back to that one in particular. Joris, you want to add anything? What you just heard on the drivers?
Yes, I would like to add that you could either look at making the current molecules of the solvents more green. Let's say that we keep the same solvent, but make then a greener version of it. And of course, there's a development of completely new solvents. So I think there are two different routes to circularity, I hope.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a nice bridge you make there, Joris, to the next question we had. We had already a start with the discussion here on the trade-off. So we focus now on carbon footprint, but there is also the safety aspect, right? So these trade-offs are, as when I read, at least the audience here seems to be one of the most challenging topics. Like how do we do this trade-off? So we heard appreciation that Commission, JRC is all understanding there need to be trade-offs. So that's the good news, I would say. But it seems to be the biggest challenge. Like how do you do that, right? Is there still an order? Of course, low is low, and you need to bring safe products to the market. That goes beyond saying. But still, in that one, you have different levels of risk management measures you could apply. So is there anyone of the panel who would like to still comment the trade-off discussions on the safety aspects we just had? So yeah, any further thoughts on that? Do you experience the same, or is it still far from what you are experiencing on a daily basis? Anyone who wants to add? Yeah, Johan. Yes, feel free.
Yeah, you talk about safety aspects. So when I did my kind of introduction in the first instance, this session, was that I was talking about not a solvent, but a reactive chemical. And so that's also then, if you call it a trade-off between greenhouse gas emissions and electricity, right? Yeah. And mind you, they're not VPBs or PBTs or anything like it. It's very reactive, so it can't be. For me, it's clear the Green Deal is the major goal that we're facing, and that for me overrides or may override other considerations, as long as you're able to kind of either say reduce exposure to zero, or kind of at least manage the risk.
Yeah. So it's about keeping the ball on the big challenges, the greenhouse gas emissions.
I think it would be helpful if there's some, and I think there is, some recognition of the challenges that industry faces, even if you apply the SSbD framework. And so SSbD, I've been in research and innovation for longer than I'd like to admit, over 30 years, right? So stimulating research and innovation with the company, are you serious? If you don't do research and innovation, you're dead within 10 years. Whatever the size of the company is. So research and innovation.
Lifeblood, yeah.
So yeah. SMEs, I understand it, but if you look at big companies, to survive, they need research and innovation.
Yeah, yeah. Andreas?
I hope I understood your question correctly. I think on the one hand, we are talking about safety aspects regarding the outside, which is nature and human beings outside. So this is about emissions you have to control. We have limit values also coming from various regulations like the BREF process, etc. So this is of course important to keep, but also you have to look at worker safety. When working in the company. Now we do have in our industry a kind of virtually closed process. It's not like in the chemical industry completely closed, but virtually closed. So still we have to comply with the limit values for the different OALs basically, and we measure these regularly on a regular basis. And that's of course very important to comply there. So these are, from my point of view, the main safety issues we have to comply with, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. Christian, please chip in.
Yeah, I would like to. We had a discussion within the product stewardship team about the concept, and one of the concerns, and that question came from one of the members, is that the initial impression was that the SSbD process, as proposed by the Commission, so in the 4 steps, would be very stringent in the sense that if a chemical would be hazardous in step 1, it would be kicked out already. And if it wouldn't pass 2, it would be kicked out, if you know what I mean. A very stringent step-by-step approach. But what I hear from today, I think I get the impression it's different. You look at all the steps, and then once you have looked at all the steps, you make up the complete picture. Overall conclusion is
Yes, the second case is correct, and also the framework allows you to. It depends on what kind of substance we're talking and what kind of sector sometimes, but sometimes it allows you to. If you have certain models, it allows you to simulate what will come up later. Because sometimes we get this question of people saying, okay, but if I need to put all of this money in order to go through the assessment, to then go to step 4 and see that actually I'm not good with my safety and sustainability charts, let's say scores, then I've wasted so much money and such a big budget. And that's not the idea. The idea is also to gather all of these tools and models that allows us also to see upfront in a let's say in a trustworthy way how to make this assessment.
Sorry, yeah, I need to press it. Now it's green, I think, yeah. No, thank you for that. And I think it relates also a little bit to a second question that came up, is that the SSbD process as a whole is rather complex and complicated, requires a lot of effort and data, and not disadvantage small. How would you see that?
Yeah, also that's one of the questions that keeps coming back, and I'm glad that sometimes we don't talk only about very sector specific individualities, but we also, you know, meet together in the challenges that we face, because if we only had to deal with very detailed topics about each industry, it would be very, very complex for us to do. Bring me back to it.
Small and medium.
Yes. So in fact, there are parts of the assessment that are actually very laborious and complex and difficult for small companies to be able to perform, of course, and that's it's not negligible. It's not something actually that we are unaware of, and we are not aiming for every company, no matter its size, to be able to perform the entire assessment. It can be the assessment can be performed on the specific steps that your company contributes to or uses. And the idea is also, because we have a lot of talks about SMEs with the SETAC community, etc., where they are engaging a lot in this field. The idea is also to be able to outsource or use experts from different different resources in order to be able to perform those more costly steps or share the data with each other. So definitely we're not aiming for a small company, asking them to do the entire assessment by themselves and be able to go from A to Z with their own resources.
Yeah, Johan?
I also think that the JRC project, the IRIS project we talked about, can be helpful, because we're setting up communities of practice there. So for particular value chains, and there are quite a few, I think 7 value chains by now. So there may be more in the future, but big value chains are involved. And they're very, very different, right? Construction is very, very local. You don't want to say transport concrete over by plane, just joking. Whereas textiles is very global. So you have very different value chains. But say the SSbD kind of concept is kind of applied throughout all these value chains. And we set up kind of communities for each of the value chains. And I think for solvents, or for ESIG, then they may be kind of an opportunity to link to those.
To the value, to the existing value chain.
Or SMEs that could join them because say it could be very big networks, right?
Or the
It's
user group here could potentially propose other value chains as well, which might be
join the existing value chains.
Join
because
is the
I tell you that
join is the first step.
look at the 7 value chains that are involved
Yeah,
and
so
see to what extent your solvents are being used in any of those value chains.
Yeah.
And otherwise, propose a new one.
Yeah, propose a new one. Looking here at my screen, Joris, is there anything you would like to add? Because I feel we're now already expanding on the questions regarding the framework, which is good.
Yeah.
So I heard also Cornelia, and I was really intrigued by what you said, that you have really particular challenges with the claims that are being made, right? So are these claims, well, how to, again, it's partly a trade-off. So how do you rate them? Which are the most important ones? But it seems that as a prerequisite to have claims, you need to have good assessment methodologies to be sure that you can assess them in the right way. You need to have the data. You need to have the tools. So question here, so how do you see actually what's being developed by both Commission and JRC? So how do you see that really now helping you in making sure that you can make the right claims are being made? So do you see that framework being helpful? Where would you like the Commission to focus on for your case? So what's missing in your views? So that would be interesting to hear your views. Joris, are you ready to give us some insights on that? Thank you very much.
A simple question, yes. Well, I'm very positive about the fact that there is a framework, that there is a structure. Of course, now it is up to industry or to academic to really do the inventions, because without new materials or new molecules, there is no sustainable future, perhaps. We are working in pharmaceutical industry, and our regulatory bodies are, I think, even more strict, are looking at new molecules and materials even more strict than I think on new materials only discussed here, solvents. So I would be very interested to see this kind of framework also made available or being extended for pharmaceutical industry, because if we are going to develop new solvents or other processes, we are going to develop new molecules ourselves in API business or new routes. And then a lot of changes will come up, and a lot of changes will be filed to regulatory authorities. In Europe, that's the EMA for pharmaceuticals. And I think it would be a very good idea for the Commission to help us create a framework for that, and also to make regulations on fast track assessments, or that we as a API industry know what we need to have on with respect to data if we want to change something or to file new routes which are circular.
Yeah.
Can I make myself clear now?
I apologize, I didn't hear that last one.
I don't know if I made my point clear, but that would be my comment.
Yes, so I understood you're positive because there's now a structured way, and you're asking Commission even to say, like, for us, you in the pharmaceutical business, it would be helpful, very beneficial if that framework could also be applied to those ingredients. It could help us in a fast track procedure.
And I know that there are some European projects working on this. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. This seems to be a question immediately directed to you, Christina. Can you enlighten us what your first reaction is?
Yeah, what you just added last is one thing that I wanted to say, that we are trying to take into account the biggest industries, let's say, and fund projects on this. And I also think it's really important how you open, saying that you actually welcome it, and there needs to be a certain, let's say, common understanding for us, when because these are concepts that actually interest everybody. But how do we define safe and how do we define sustainable is the essence of it. Like Cornelia was saying, just adding the word bio in front of it doesn't make it better, but it does trick the eye of most, and it just also makes us believe that it is better. So being able to really be specific about what it is that we're looking at and have a homogeneous way of assessing it and giving it a name and giving it a score is going to all help us talk about the same thing and really assess the same thing, versus now that it's kind of like a claim but doesn't really have always, it's not always the case, but sometimes it doesn't have a substance behind it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you for that first reaction. Andreas, yes, indeed, because you might have a different perspective as a user, or what would you expect that framework? How can it help you, or does it bring anything in addition, or?
Yeah, not really a different view, maybe just to add a few things. So I think, first of all, it's good to have a framework, a methodology, a structure. Also, I quite like the idea of these different value chains. Now, the example I have given would be in the area of automotive industry, although winding wires go into many different industries. Whether, let's say, the subject or the product is important enough and you know, not too specific to be incorporated in that given automotive value chain, I cannot judge. I don't know. I don't have any details. I don't know whether this will work, but it's definitely, from my perspective, the first time that the whole value chain is being considered, because what we normally feel, I say it with simple words, you know, you have a certain regulation. If you're using solvents, and you are obliged to do this and that, and nobody seems to care about, you know, what's happening before and after, and whether any other criteria also affected, like energy. If you look at the BREF processes, it's very difficult, you know, to really bring this in, that it is a comprehensive judgment on all these different aspects. So I quite like the idea that in this case, for the first time, this is really being acknowledged. Coming back to that question from the beginning, how this is being, I don't know, how the different criteria are judged, it has to be product or industry specific, I suppose. But the idea of not necessarily being green in all these different criteria, this is something which is just reality. You know, we were talking about dreams. Okay, we're all dreaming, and dream is the start of the realization, but that's only a saying sometimes. You know, we have to acknowledge the realistic case, and therefore I think here really good thoughts, and I think on that basis you can really advance.
Yeah. No, this is great, because we still had one question as well that we wanted to submit to you as a panel. That was indeed, Cornelia showed it. We have the SRIP, the Strategic Innovation and Research Plan, where solvents are really being put there like urgent action, urgent innovation action. As it's about innovation would be needed, so as a priority to have indeed solvents. And I quote here the plan to develop solvent formulations without hazardous substance and toxicity aspects. I repeat that perhaps for the coughing. So to develop solvent formulations without hazardous substance and toxicity aspects linked to their volatility and risk of pollution along their entire life cycle. So yeah, I already heard you saying, like, indeed this is what we would like to see. Any addition you would like to add? Any experience you had with alternatives? So how does it work for the users? Like, what are you faced with? Is it easy to implement? Yeah, if you can share a few thoughts on that, that would be interesting. So there is the SRIP, which identifies as a priority action. I think chemical industry, we also where we continuously want to go for alternatives. Yeah, but how does the user look into that one? What would be your requirements to us? Who wants to start? Joris, I saw you slightly nodding.
Yeah, nodding, yes. Well, pharmaceutical industry is quite conservative. So we stick to the organic solvents that we know because those are the solvents that we have, let's say, filed in our regulatory dossiers. So we're not easily changing to new solvent formulations. But in development and process improvement, we are making choices for, let's say, less harmful and less toxicological problematic solvents. But then we are talking about the existing solvents that that we have. So I would be interested in new solvent formulations, but that is a kind of a longer term development, I think.
Yeah. So it's an improvement pathway next to a longer term development of new ones, which will take time to implement in the industry then. Yeah. Okay. Is there, and then, yeah, how about the point that Andreas already nicely evocated, that there is a need to have it then done working together with the full supply and value chain. What are your experiences with that? How do you? Because we haven't heard you on the collaboration part yet.
Well, I feel that a lot of companies are seeking the collaboration now because of, for instance, the CSRD directive that is being implemented now. But it's all in the, let's say, the first phase. Everybody is having the same questions. Everybody is sharing information, so that is quite positive. It's quite open. But we're still at the early stage of that collaboration, I believe.
Early stage. Okay. Thank you. So it's happening, but it's at an early stage. Christian, you want to add anything of collaborations? Is it being discussed in, well, it is being discussed probably in the product stewardship, but anything you want to share?
I mean, the ESIG product stewardship team is a platform of collaboration with all the product stewards and other members from the different companies.
Yes, but with the supply chain and the value chain. Sorry, my question was not clear perhaps.
I think that's something we need to consider when developing the proposal for the pilot, how we want to do that.
So you're looking for input there.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Super. Okay, great. So we have covered already quite a lot of questions. We're just going to pay attention to the room, this is the exact moment, and to questions online. Yes, please. If you can introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Chirac. I'm from Asta company. We are producing the same product like Andreas has said, the Weidenweiss Group. My background is chemistry, ecotoxicology, and environmental chemistry. So we have some regulation like many other industries. If we are talking about solvent, so we develop, my team and myself, some new installation system. But only one question or just topic to be tackled here. If some solvent we are using have not only as a solvent characteristic, but also as a catalyst. So we have tried just to replace one existing system, and our product have a shelf life of 30 years, 30. So, and we developed completely new polymer. Let's say we had to use new polymer, but chemical and thermal properties were very, let's say, lower than the existing product. So maybe 20 or 15 years. So the question is it a green chemistry or not? We only replace one solvent with the other, with, let's say, less hazardous properties. So that's the question. And in our industry, as Andreas explained, the solvent will be completely oxidized. So it means mostly more than 97, 98%. So we reuse the energy for the process. So we decrease in this way, we decrease energy consumption.
Yeah. So again, what we hear here is, I think it's the biggest challenge, right? So how can we compare the different characteristics, the different aspects of the solutions? Is 30 years better than 20? But I would save then on toxicity or anything else. And I think you brought up another very important question, depending on the type of solution I use, my carbon footprinting might maybe be more beneficial, but if I look over the entire life cycle,
Yeah.
then the footprint is worse. Well, worse sounds so bad, but can be worse than the alternative. So anyone in the meeting room who has an idea, or from my panelists, of course, like who says how to deal about, or would you consider indeed that is the biggest challenge? And what are you looking for? Are you looking for more guidance at the side of the Commission? Or, and then I look here in the direction of Christian, is this then something that merits a common testing to take that journey together and to try to come up with solutions? Or is there anything that can be added to the conversation? Yes, the gentleman there, I can't read that far, but if you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Wouter Fransman. I work for TNO in the Netherlands, which is a research and technology organization. And I think that's what I can represent here today, but which maybe misses at the table is the research that's already been done in the projects that are funded by the European Commission. I think we're already doing a lot of what has been discussed today. So creating data platforms, building models that can predict a toxicity of chemicals and exposure throughout the life cycle. So I can fully understand the position of Christina in saying that we cannot build a legislation that will compromise on health and sustainability, obviously. But I think at the same time, we can build tooling that can transparently visualize the different pros and cons of the chemicals being produced, and then create your decision, or at least decision support on that. I think we're well advanced already in a lot of the projects, and we're building a consortium with BASF, for instance, in really starting to apply this. Because I think if we talk about building legislation around SSbD, that will be very complicated.
No, I don't think we're talking about legislation around SSbD. I think nobody around the table would be calling for that. But what I hear is it starts with the tools to make things already, to visualize the decisions, the pain points where you'll have the trade-off decisions to be taken. But I think I hear companies saying, so what if I have a product that, or if I need to then amend my process, and the return of investments of doing so is like 5 years, is 10 years, and in the end, tomorrow we have a change, and something else is the favorite of the day. So today it might be greenhouse gas emissions, but tomorrow it might be something else. That's a bit how I read here the sentiment of the meeting room. So I think that's a valid question. So how to deal with that one? Anyone has a brilliant idea? Or if I got it wrong, if I misread the meeting room, then you can also tell me. No. So I think this is one of the major challenges. I take it as a conclusion, and my advice would be go for the testing and try to see where we land and try to make comparison cases. But that's a personal advice and nothing to do with my moderation here. Okay, we're almost nearing the end. So we had a final round, as we usually have, to our panelists. Is there a question online, Angelina? No? No. Okay. There's still one question in the room. Happy to give you the floor.
Thank you. Luc Turkenburg, representing SSbD, the paint manufacturers. One thing in the whole discussion was not mentioned explicitly. I think that solvents are meant for a certain purpose.
Yes.
So we don't use them because it's fun. It's simply because they need to do the trick.
Yes.
And I think that on a sustainability idea, you can really play with this a lot. If you have a certain material that needs to be degreased because it's a bit smutty, you can use 50 milliliters of a hydrocarbon solvent or 100 liters of hot water and soap, and probably you get the same result. It's not even said that you get the same result, but I think there is a huge difference in material efficiency.
Yeah.
I think that is something that you should really look into, because I think if you have very comparable solvents, you can play around with doing the balancing of all the aspects that we mention on manufacturing, energy, sustainability, and end of life. But if it doesn't do the job that it needs to be done, you end immediately in a huge mountain of wasted energy.
Absolutely, absolutely. It was mentioned functionality, but maybe not stressed enough. Andreas, you want to add?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a structure. I hope that we can really gain something. But yeah, looking at the functionality, customers do not want to lose anything of the functionality. Additionally, actually, apart from functionality, it's about price. So if we talk about electric cars at the moment, at least in Germany, nobody's buying them except the Chinese ones. Now those are probably produced in particular taking account sustainability aspects in the wires and batteries and so on. So okay, you all know what I mean. It's actually very frustrating. It does not mean that we should not do anything. Maybe even on the contrary, this can be part of our unique selling proposition. This can really be an advantage and so on. But reality shows at the moment that also price and cost pressure, especially in the automotive industry, but also a few others, is really on. And in that framework, not only the cost and the resources involved in innovation have to be considered, but also green solvents, at least from my very limited knowledge, I'm not a chemist, are generally speaking more expensive than others at the moment. This can change, I don't know. So this is unfortunately also a subject we have to take into consideration. So that's reality at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. So functionality, that's the starting point for sure. And let's not forget about the cost. Yes, you're pointing to, okay. Yes, please.
Hi, sorry, James Clark from representing Adable, the green technology company. Can I just, I mean, Joris has made a very important point, which has just been touched on again there, which is the need for innovation. If you look at the solvent pool we have available today, it's quite limited. I mean, I remember not many years ago, the pharma industry, for example, generating a list of categorization from red to green, 5 categories, I think. And the ones in the red category certainly haven't changed. But interestingly, the one of them in the very top green has already been identified under REACH as, shall we say, problematic. Now, I know it's only one criteria, but nonetheless, it's making some people think twice. Yeah. The reality is that there is not a lot of innovation when it comes to solvents. There are not many new solvents, clever new solvents, shall we say, becoming available. And I hope that, for example, ESIG take that on board as they extend their range of criteria into sustainability, because as I said, the existing pool of solvents is quite limited. Many of them are, at least most of them are already petroleum derived, and therefore to some people becomes an issue. Many are being classified under REACH, for example, as being, as I said, somewhat problematic, etc., etc. So we need innovation. Now, the point just made about cost, surely that's inevitable, and something new coming on the market, especially in a high volume market, is going to face a problem. So trying to encourage uptake of new green solvents, to me, is absolutely critical. I mean, I welcome the CBE call that referred to earlier. Fantastic. You know, I think we do need to do that, and by design is a great way to approach this. But, you know, ultimately, it's, I mean, I was talking to, dare one say it, a Chinese industrialist recently, and he made the comment that said that, you know, we don't worry about feedstock, we don't worry about process, we only worry about markets. So the markets have to be there. Yeah. And have to be seen to be there to encourage the innovation and the investment to allow, you know, initially very expensive alternatives. And I don't just mean drop-ins. In many ways, I think we're distracted by drop-ins. I mean genuinely new. There's an expression that goes around sometimes, bio-better. It can, for example, be bio-based, and it could be better as well than the existing solvents. So we're not just chasing necessarily the same as, but in a green disguise. We're looking at possibly the potential for, and has been proven in some cases, for genuinely new innovative solvents, which can, you know, address issues that we have at the moment, and also perhaps take us forward in terms of the actual properties and application.
Yeah, lots of interesting points indeed. So markets need to be there, and I think what we have more and more like these kind of stakeholder conversations, and what I heard other drivers, customers are asking it. So yeah, I think, but with asking you don't have the volume, so that's going to be very critical. What I also read, like what I also wanted to ask you as a follow-up is like you mentioned indeed, like we're happy that now the framework starts to integrate other criteria on top of the safety. That's what you seemed also to say. So can I take it that what would you, if you look at the framework, how would you what would be your recommendation towards Commission and towards JRC to integrate? And if I can just advertise a little bit for the work that Civic Horizontal has been doing. So you will soon see a guidance being released, and Christian was also part of the discussions to have that. And yes, we started with, it's so important that at the start, the first step that you identify what the functionality, why are we going to use it for, and what are our customers' requirements? What are the market requirements? What are the regulatory requirements? So what we try to do there is exactly what I was listening to. So what's out there? What is it that we should innovate towards? So just advertising this one should be published now end of January. But what we indeed try to do is to interpret the safe and sustainable by design framework and bring it closer to the innovation practices that we have in our company. And with that, we hope to build bridges between the two, and we hope then to make it more applicable. But also very interested to hear the views of the users here. So if we now, I unfortunately have to conclude. I'm looking at the chair. I unfortunately have to conclude. So can I ask the panelists to give the one final thought they have, a recommendation they have, either for the solvent industry, that is, if you're a user, either for on the side of the policymakers, but let's do that. And then I will also come back to you, Christina, and to Iransu, like what is your final thought when you were listening to this discussion? I heard you had expectations, that is also us telling you, giving back, that was your starting point. And my final question to you at the end will be, are you satisfied with what you heard? Is this helping you to create a safe and sustainable framework? So let's start first with going back to my alphabetic order. Andreas, what is your final?
Well, if it's one sentence, I would say let's try hard to go ahead, and on the basis of a, let's say, diversified approach, not only looking at one aspect, and this diversified approach along the whole value chain, I really appreciate the idea. From my knowledge or perception, it's really the first time we have this complete view, or can have this complete view and assessment. So yeah, let's go for it.
Super. So, Johan, Christian is first. Sorry, if I take the alphabet.
Right, thank you. What I find important is the fact that it's going to be a balanced approach. So you look at all the aspects that you need to consider, and then you take a balanced decision on the overall picture. I think that's going to be very. It's also good that there is a model and other models are being developed. And I also like the suggestion to also go vertical, so to take the whole chain.
Yeah.
Because you cannot see a solvent apart from the use. It's made to consider that in doing the whole SSbD assessment.
Yeah. And did you get sufficient input, or you're counting on the lunch to have more?
I'm counting on the lunch. I got input, and I'm also counting on my train trip back to Rotterdam to give it another 2 hours.
Okay, but people will know to find you. Yes, Johan.
So I think for me the words is focus on those SSbD aspects that matter most. And I think I'm and not say because the SSbD assessment, if you look at life cycle assessment, is very, very comprehensive. and you don't see the forest through the trees. So for me, it's about what do you think for a particular value chain is most important, and focus at improving that, right? Or reducing the
And this Green Deal focus there.
the green. Well, for me, the Green Deal is given the greenhouse gas emission goal is overarching.
Good.
And then in addition, there may be other kind of aspects that are important for a particular value chain.
Yeah. Joris, can you
Yes,
repeat your?
yes. I would say that becoming circular as Europe is a challenge that you could not. I don't think we can imagine how our processes would look like if they would be completely circular. So I think we need each other. So let's work together indeed. So from the solvent industry, we would need your help to develop circular solvents to enable us to make circular processes. And to the Commission, I would like to ask help in assessing all the new production routes, or maybe even new APIs that we come up with, because I think that will be a major task in the years to come.
Okay. Yes, we could have spent another hour, I think, on the circularity. Unfortunately, time didn't allow for that one. Iransu, are you still online? No? Okay. Then I will pass on now, Christina. Was it, yeah, sorry. Was it worthwhile coming to CIFIC to meet this team?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you. It's nice to feel that there is a group that is like, okay, sleeves up. Let's get going and let's get working, because there are sectors there who meet us with a lot of like, no, we can't, no, we don't have the money, no, where is the data, no, we have like too much competition. If we share data with upstream or downstream, and they're gonna take our patterns and use them in other continents to make the same. But anyways, so there is also a lot of this there, and I'm happy today it was not the case. It makes life easier to envision the same thing and to say, okay, yeah, sure, that's what we want. How do we do it? Of course, it's not all green. There are challenges, but they are kind of like the ones that keep coming back. And what I get is more the willingness, and also the acknowledgement that the solvent sector is innovating, because it seems to be like one of those old sectors where your solvents are used in multiple applications and in multiple ways, but there's the same array of solvents, let's say. But I'm glad to hear that you are recognizing that there is innovation possible in processes, for example. So we are talking about this specifically, and not just creating a new solvent from scratch. So yeah, for me, I am glad I've been part of this discussion, hearing out all of your ideas and thoughts. Yeah.
And I'm sure this is only a start, and you will meet those colleagues further down the road. And with that, I like to ask you all to give a big applause to our panelists and to Commission and JRC. And over to the chair for the final minutes of the meeting.
Yes, we arrive already at the end. That has been very quick, and I hope that you have all enjoyed both the presentation from the Commission, from GRCs, and the panel discussion. That has been very instructive for me, very enjoyable, and very constructive. So I hope that you got a different image than other sectors. That's what we try to give also from that side. So thanks to ESIG again to have this stakeholder day. At least it exists. That's very interactive, and the attendance demonstrates that that's a useful event. So the remark, there will be circulation of information after discussion with the speakers, what will be able to release and what is not, specifically for the Q&A. And so Anna, I'll leave you really the last word. That is an ESIG event.
Thank you, Ellen. No, I think it's fantastic to have the opportunity for this dialogue, which I think is the secret weapon, dialogue, 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 to make sure that we arrive to a compromise. It will have to have to be a compromise, because the industry is very aware of the limitations imposed by physics and thermodynamic principles, and this awareness will have to be handed over to those who develop the regulatory framework. So thanks again for this opportunity. Cornelia, Helen, Angelina, thank you for the impeccable organization as always. Thanks to those online, you've been very patient. Enjoy your lunch and enjoy the rest of the day, and hopefully we can meet face to face or in person one day. And for those in the meeting room, we can enjoy lunch next door, and those who join SVOC after lunch, see you later. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.